It's not just China. The Biden administration is also facing off in a stunningly public and personal way with Russia. President Biden called Vladimir Putin a killer in an interview earlier this week. Russia responded by raising the specter that Biden is too old for the job. Joining me now, it didn't stop there. Joining me now, Washington Post columnist Josh Rogin, also author of an important new book called Chaos Under Heaven, Trump, Xi, and the Battle for the 21st Century. It's good to see you, my friend. What do you think
Likewise.
of how quickly and suddenly the Biden administration is seeing this escalation with Russia and very clearly now with China?
You know, well, there was a lot of hope by the Chinese leadership that they would get a warmer reception from the Biden team, and that this era of confronting China on its human rights violations and lots of other violations would be over, but that's just not the case. And the Biden team has been very clear that they're going to stand up for American interests, but also American values, and sort of stand with allies and put their focus on allies and give these countries, our adversaries, China and Russia, the cold shoulder. So that's a measure of continuity with the last administration that neither the Chinese nor the Russian leadership is going to like, but they're not supposed to like it because we're supposed to be defending what we believe in, not what they're doing.
It's one thing, have these diplomatic talks happen behind closed doors, and we hear from sources and officials, anonymous sources, that this is happening. But this isn't happening behind closed doors. Just look what went down with Tony Blinken yesterday in Alaska. I mean, this is happening publicly. This is a deliberate choice. What is the Biden administration strategy here?
Right, you're exactly right. We've heard similar messages from Chinese leaders in private, but it's very unprecedented for them to do it in public. It shows that China's feeling vulnerable about the globalization of the human rights charges against them and the insistence by countries like the United States to confront them on things like the Uyghur genocide and the Hong Kong crackdown, threatening Taiwan, etc. So their choice is to double down, and their choice is to lash out. And at least we know how they're going to play it, and that's useful information. But the Biden team is not able to do what the Chinese want, right? What the Chinese leadership wants is for us to shut up about their bad actions and to shut up about their human rights violations. And the Biden team just can't do that. So it's actually an escalation that is definitely going to get worse before it gets better. And the Biden team is doing what they can do, which is basically what they should do, which is to speak clearly, try not to raise the temperature any more than necessary, but not accede to the Chinese government's demands that we just ignore all of their atrocities.
It's interesting, and you just note this, and you note this in your book, that this is one area, one of few areas, I would say, of unity in American politics right now, right? Views toward China, this approach toward China, that was a similar approach from Trump to here. Do you think China understands that? I mean, you dive into this in your latest column.
Right, and that's not to say that, we're headed for a Cold War with China or anything like that. In fact, we should be doing what we can to avoid the conflict that neither side seeks. But at the same time, there's just no doubt that people around the country, voters, Democrats and Republicans, are telling their politicians, their elected lawmakers, and the American leadership that they want a tougher China policy, especially since the pandemic. And we're finding out that Chinese government's actions actually affect us, our security and our prosperity and our public health, and not just us, countries all over the world. So, as China rises, its behavior is becoming a problem for Americans and people in other countries. And, this is the broad effort that we're all engaged in, is to try to how to manage that rise while avoiding the conflict. But it's going to require the Chinese government to realize that they can't just tell the international community to shut up, and that they're eventually going to have to respond to the criticisms and hopefully stop the atrocities. And those atrocities shock Americans, and they shock people around the world, and that's why you're seeing the reaction from governments around the world that you're seeing now.
And they should. It is going to be interesting to watch Tony Blinken lead on this and navigate this relationship with China. Josh, thank you. Congrats on the book.
Thank you. Thank you.